Hi everyone, and welcome to the Star Wars Reading Club book review of Ahsoka by E.K. Johnston. And we had a nice change of pace this week, just compared to last week's book review of Darth Plagueis by James Luceno. But right away, I should just mention that I really enjoyed this book. I wasn't quite sure what I was anticipating going in. We'll get into that in just a second. But I think anyone who saw any of the seasons of the Clone Wars or if you've seen recently the Rebels TV series, I think that you're going to enjoy this book. But basically, when I first heard about it, and I might have been pretty late compared to when others had heard about this book, but I hadn't heard about it until July of this year at Celebration. But right when I heard that it was coming out, I was looking forward to it just because finally we're getting some information about what happened to Ahsoka after she left the Jedi Order. And I think that going in, I was of the opinion, maybe wrongfully, but I thought we were going to get some information about what happened to Ahsoka pretty much the days after she left the Jedi Order. And in a lot of ways, I think that I was anticipating the first pages of the novel being from Ahsoka walking down the steps of the Jedi Temple away from Anakin. But that's not exactly what we got in the novel, and I think that it was better off for it. The timeline for this novel is roughly 1 year after the rise of the Empire. So I think that that was a good time period to set it in, just because we're seeing how Ahsoka is dealing basically with the new order of things. And although it does take place 1 year after the rise of the Empire, the first scenes of the novel do take place pretty much right as Order 66 is about to happen. But pretty much we're looking at 1 year into the Empire. And just in regards to the plot in general, it is a teen novel, and I didn't really know what to expect with that type of designation. It's been a while since I read a teen novel myself, and I've never read a Star Wars teen novel. But nonetheless, I don't think that that really mattered. The plot, and you could tell a little bit that it was a teen novel just in regards to the plot. But in a lot of ways, it was similar to any Star Wars novel out there. But the plot in general, it was good. I mean, it is what you would expect. It was Ahsoka trying to find her way in the galaxy, just under the new Empire. I think that it was very similar in a lot of ways as well to the novel A New Dawn by John Jackson Miller, just in the sense that you had Padawan who was in hiding from the Empire and then ultimately makes a decision that they're not going to hide anymore, and they're gonna come out of hiding and start to fight against the Empire. So in a lot of ways, it was similar to A New Dawn. I thought it was good, but I thought one area that the plot was suffering was just from the fact that there wasn't a main antagonist, and not really a primary antagonist for Ahsoka to fight against. And as we'll see in a second here, the new Inquisitor that was introduced in the novel really wasn't a good antagonist at the end of the day. So I did think that that was a bit of a weakness for the novel. It made the ending a bit anticlimactic, but nonetheless, overall, the plot was good, but it was simple, but it was also good. And I might view it as simple just because I read Darth Plagueis last week, and that was pretty plot intense. But nonetheless, the plot was decent overall, and at the end of the day, we did see how Ahsoka ended up joining with the rebellion. But just staying on the topic of Ahsoka as a character, she does make it clear, even at this point, 1 year after Order 66, that she does not consider herself a Jedi. Which I thought that it was good because it stays true to what she says in the Rebels Season 2 finale, where she says to Darth Vader that she's not a Jedi. So even at this point, she's already made that decision that she is not a Jedi, and I think that it works through the novel just because some of the actions she takes, you can tell that they're definitely making a clear delineation that she's no longer a Jedi at this point. But another interesting point is just the fact that at the beginning of the novel, she is in hiding, and she's going by the name of Ashla, which, as I understand it, is the initial name that they wanted to give Ahsoka when they were coming up with the character for the Clone Wars. So I thought that that was a very interesting tie-in there. But just in regards to what Ahsoka knows at this point, I was pretty surprised to see exactly how much she knew about what was going on in the galaxy. But she does believe that Obi-Wan and Anakin are dead. And I thought that it was interesting just that she was saying that she was trying to make a connection or feel Anakin's presence through the Force, and that she tried to contact Anakin, but she was unable to feel his presence or to make any contact with him. And I thought that that was interesting just because in a lot of ways it rings true with what Obi-Wan says, and even what Darth Vader says, that Anakin is dead. So his presence in the Force is dead at that point, and Ahsoka can't feel him or feel his presence. So I thought that that was very interesting, and it does sort of say a lot about the character, where Ahsoka's first reaction is to try to contact Anakin. And I thought that that was interesting just because she does a lot of times throughout the novel think back to Obi-Wan and think back to Anakin and sort of question, well, what would they do? So there is a nice tie-in at this point that Ahsoka is still a little bit dependent on her background with the other Jedi, particularly her master Anakin. But as you go through the novel, she definitely starts to gain a bit of an independence there, and doesn't come to rely so much on, well, what would Obi-Wan do? What would Anakin do? So I'd like that, and I like the fact that she did try to reach out and contact Anakin. And also, too, I was very surprised just how much she knew about what happened in regards to Order 66. Because, you know, right at the beginning, because she's in hiding, she definitely knows the danger that she's in and what would happen to her if she was discovered by the Empire. But also, too, I thought it was interesting, and it makes sense just with the scenes that we see very quickly of Ahsoka and Rex. But she was aware of the fact that the Clone Wars basically carried out Order 66 because of a biochip. And at first, I thought that it was a bit weird that she would know that there was a biochip that was controlling the clone troopers. But of course she would know because she's with Rex at the time of Order 66. And Rex had just removed his biochip. We don't see any of that in the novel, but it does make sense just knowing what we know from the TV show Rebels. And also, too, she knew that the Jedi Temple was attacked and had been burned, so she knew not to return to the Jedi Temple. But more importantly, I thought that it was very interesting, and maybe I missed something or I haven't thought it through thoroughly just yet, but she also knew that Palpatine, who was the Emperor at this point, was a Sith Lord at that time. So I was wondering a little bit how exactly she put it together that the Emperor was a Sith, and just maybe where she got that information, or if she could put it together, why others couldn't put it together. Or maybe they did and just didn't care. But I thought that it was interesting that she recognized that Palpatine was a Sith, and then also recognized that he was working for years on this long-term plan. So she basically put it all together. I thought that we were going to see a little bit more of her uncovering all of those points, but right when we get to 1 year after Order 66, she already knows all of that. But one important point that she doesn't know, of course, yet, is that Anakin becomes Darth Vader. And in fact, very interesting, although she knows so much about the Emperor, she knows basically nothing about Darth Vader yet at this point. Doesn't know what he looks like, doesn't even really know if he exists. Basically, all she knows in regard to Darth Vader is that there's rumors of a Dark Lord serving the Emperor. So I thought that it was interesting. She knows quite a bit about the Emperor and the whole plot behind Order 66 and the clone troopers, and also too just the extent of how much danger she's in and how much danger all Jedi are in. But she knows very little about Darth Vader. So I thought that that was interesting. Now, I also like that we got to see a bit of a reconciliation between Anakin and Ahsoka just prior to Order 66. I had always sort of thought of it that after Ahsoka left the Jedi Order, she just never spoke to Anakin again, and that was a main driving force behind his falling to the dark side. I think more importantly, what it symbolizes now that we've seen a little bit of a reconciliation, which I'll get into in just a second, I don't think that Ahsoka's leaving drove Anakin to the dark side as he felt betrayed by Ahsoka. Rather, I think that the whole situation of Ahsoka leaving pushed Anakin towards the dark side because he felt betrayed by the Jedi Order itself, much the same as Ahsoka had felt betrayed by the Jedi Order. But I did like that we saw reconciliation between Anakin and Ahsoka. And reconciliation might not be the right word because I don't think that they in particular had a falling out with each other. But we did see that Ahsoka had reached out to Anakin at some point before Order 66 and before the end of the Clone Wars. And more importantly, Anakin had reached back out to her. So when they reached out to each other, what Anakin had done was gave her a mission on the planet of Mandalore. And that's basically where the book starts from there. So we get to see Ahsoka on Mandalore in battle with Maul. So I thought that that was really nice. It was great to see that Anakin and Ahsoka did meet back up again. And we got to see some of those moments, or what was going to ultimately become of that relationship, just with the Untold Stories of Ahsoka panel at Celebration. But I like that they did have another final meeting ultimately before Anakin falls to the dark side, just because it makes their meeting in Rebels at the end of Season 2 so much stronger, that they did leave having a good relationship with each other. So I really liked that we got to, not only that they did come back and got to have a mission with each other, but I did like that they left it on good terms. The fact that their last meeting is on Mandalore and not on the front steps of the Jedi Temple, I think that that's a lot stronger for what we've seen in Rebels. But I also really like that we got to see how Ahsoka survived Order 66, and then just how it tied into how Rex survived, just in that he could remove his chip, and then how he survived into the Rebels TV series era. But basically what happened there was we don't get to see exactly how it went down. It was described in what I would call these transition chapters, where we only got to see bits and pieces of what exactly happened. But as I understand it, the clone troopers were about to carry out Order 66 and murder Ahsoka, and upon seeing that, Rex went in to defend Ahsoka, which caused the clone troopers to ultimately turn on him, I guess. And then instead of killing Maul, what Ahsoka did is she decided to protect Rex. So basically they protected each other from the clone troopers, and that's how they were both able to survive Order 66. But the plan that they came up with afterwards was it officially became known that Rex killed Ahsoka, and then in some way Rex also died in the ensuing battle. So on Mandalore, I assume it was on Mandalore, they buried another clone trooper but marked the grave that's where Rex was buried. And then Ahsoka ultimately buried her lightsabers there as well. So I did like to see exactly how it was. Again, we didn't see exactly everything that went down, but we did get a pretty good picture of how Ahsoka survived Order 66, and then just how influential Rex was in her being able to survive. So that was nice to see as well. But we got to see and learn a lot of great new information about Ahsoka, and ultimately at the end of the novel, we see her find her true role within the rebellion, running its intelligence networks. And I thought that that was just a great touch, because we get to see how she becomes Fulcrum from the TV show Rebels, and also too, just throughout the novel, you get to see just how lacking the communications network is with the rebellion. So the fact that she joins that aspect was a great touch. But the character of Ahsoka, I thought, was very well done by E.K. Johnston. But just in seeing her join the rebellion, a very interesting aspect that I was not expecting in the novel was just the presence of Bail Organa. And there was quite a bit of Bail scenes in the novel, and a lot of the scenes between Bail and Ahsoka were some of my favorite in the novel. So I really liked those, because we got to see just how enormous his involvement was in the rebellion right from the beginning. Basically from day one, Bail sets up the rebellion and starts fighting back against the Empire. But I think what I liked about a lot of the Bail Organa and Ahsoka scenes was just the fact that you could see this internal struggle with Bail, just with him wanting to share with Ahsoka everything that he knows about what Obi-Wan is doing, and just how he's trying to prepare Luke for the future on Tatooine. He wants to share everything with Ahsoka, but he also is in a very tough spot because he doesn't want to jeopardize what Obi-Wan is doing. So it's interesting to see that he sort of feels kind of puts out feelers with Ahsoka to see how much exactly she knows, whether or not she knows that Padme was pregnant with Anakin's kids, and whether or not they survived, and that type of thing. So he's really struggling, wanting to tell Ahsoka everything that he knows, but also holds it all back because he knows that he's got to keep those secrets to himself. So I really thought that the scenes with Bail were really great, particularly the ones with Ahsoka. Now, some of the other interesting scenes and information that we were given in the novel, just outside of all of the Ahsoka stuff, one of them was just the fact that we saw that even as early as 1 year into the Empire, and even well before that, we saw that the Empire was already starting to age out the clone troopers in favor of stormtroopers. So I thought that that was an interesting aspect, just that we see that pretty much right from the beginning of the Empire, the clone troopers are being replaced by stormtroopers. Now, it was also a little annoying just because I think that a lot of that was done just for plot reasons, just because they could get away with the fact that there wasn't a lot of resistance provided by the stormtroopers. And even it seems like in every Star Wars novel, there has to be some claim made of just how bad the stormtroopers are militarily, which is a bit annoying just because it doesn't create a lot of resistance just on the antagonist side. But just in this novel particularly, because they're looking at such new stormtroopers, these stormtroopers were particularly not the best militarily, we'll say. So it created a pretty easy opposition for Ahsoka to go up against, which was a bit annoying. But nonetheless, it was interesting to see that already 1 year into the Empire, they're already starting to replace the clone troopers with stormtroopers. And just related to the fact that it seemed like everything had been moving pretty quickly since day one of the Empire, is just the fact that we already see at this point, 1 year into the Empire, that the Inquisitors are in full pursuit of the Jedi. So it seems like from day one of the Empire, they were starting to transition away from clone troopers, and they were already developing the Inquisitors to hunt down the Jedi as well. But there was also a new Inquisitor introduced in the novel, and that was the sixth brother. And unfortunately, as I mentioned at the beginning of the review, the sixth brother wasn't the strongest of antagonists for Ahsoka to go up against. In fact, their duel, if you could call it that, was pretty anticlimactic, as I would have to say that the sixth brother was probably the weakest of the Inquisitors that we've seen so far. So that was a little bit disappointing, but nonetheless, it was interesting to see that the Inquisitors were pretty much fully operational 1 year into the Empire. But also it seemed that the Inquisitor role was to track down the Jedi survivors of Order 66, and also they weren't to kill Force-sensitive children. Rather, what they were supposed to do was to locate Force-sensitive children and then to corrupt them and turn them to the dark side. So it was interesting to see that there was a full role for the Inquisitors in this Empire at this point as well. Now, also, there was a very cool Obi-Wan scene, again, in one of the transition chapters. Again, it was very quick, so we didn't get to see too much Obi-Wan, but we did have a chapter from his point of view, and it was actually a pretty sentimental scene. We saw that Obi-Wan was very much having trouble from moving on what had happened to Anakin. And I say it was sentimental just in the fact that because Obi-Wan's on Tatooine, we saw that he went to Anakin's mother's grave to apologize to her for what ultimately happened to Anakin. So that was interesting to see, and I think it was a nice touch as well. But basically in the Obi-Wan chapter, we saw that he was meditating and attempting to get instructions from Qui-Gon. And basically the instructions that Qui-Gon gave Obi-Wan was to let go. So I did like that. We saw that Obi-Wan had a ton of personal guilt, and if we assume that this was still 1 year after Order 66, I like that Obi-Wan was still struggling to let go of everything that had happened. And it does sort of offer a good look into the future of how Obi-Wan is able to let go of the past and move forward to try to prepare Luke. And lastly, I'll just mention one more interesting aspect to the novel, just because I don't want the review to be too long here. But we did get to see how Ahsoka ultimately ended up with her white lightsabers. And I just have to say that the whole story behind her transition to the white lightsabers was extremely well done by the author. E.K. Johnston makes mention in the acknowledgement section that she was in communication a lot with Dave Filoni and the story group, and you could definitely tell she paid a lot of attention to exactly just all the details behind how it was Ahsoka was going to get those white lightsabers. And basically, the story behind how she received her white lightsabers was she ultimately took the crystals out of the Six Brothers lightsabers who she defeated, and then put those crystals into the two new hilts that she had created. And the part that I really liked about that is she had attempted to go to Ilum's crystal caves to get her crystals, but ultimately, and I did a video on this, but what had happened that even 1 year into the Empire was starting to destroy Ilum's crystal caves. So she couldn't get crystals from Ilum at that point, and ultimately she had to take them from the Inquisitor that she defeated. So that was one good point about the quick defeat of the Inquisitor, was just we got to see that she used his crystals to form her new white lightsabers. But I thought that it was very well done, just in the sense that it goes towards the fact that we see the lightsaber colors, the crystals taking on the personalities of the individual who's using them. And we also got to see that, I guess, the way that the Inquisitors, or maybe all Darkside users, were creating their red lightsabers was just through a process whereby, and they called it bleeding the crystals, whereby what they were doing was bending the crystals to their own will. So I guess that's how the Inquisitors were getting their lightsabers to be red. But ultimately, when Ahsoka got her crystal, it changed it from red to white. So I really liked that. I thought that was a very interesting touch and a really interesting way for Ahsoka to ultimately get her white lightsabers. But I think I'll stop the review there. I don't want it to be too long. I'm sure that I'll do some more in-depth videos just related to the novel, just because there was a lot of interesting aspects in there, and definitely we could talk a lot about them in a lot more detail. But I'll stop there. I hope you guys enjoyed this review. If you've read the novel Ahsoka, definitely let me know what your opinions of the novel were down in the comments section below. I think what I'm going to do for the next review, when I purchased Ahsoka, I also saw Path of Destruction in the bookstore, so I made sure to pick that one up as well. I had mentioned in the Darth Plagueis review that it was pretty much a toss-up at this point, which novel was my favorite, Path of Destruction or Darth Plagueis. So when I saw Path of Destruction, I had to give it another read, just so I could see if it was still my favorite book or if Darth Plagueis had beaten it out at this point. So I think what I'll do is I'll read Path of Destruction next, and then I'll start in on the Darth Vader comic series, because as I mentioned in the last review, I've read the first volume and I'm really looking forward to get into the other ones. So Path of Destruction will be next for the book review. I hope you guys look forward to that. I hope that you all enjoyed the review, and definitely let me know what you think down in the comments section below. Thanks for listening, everyone, and I'll talk to you guys again soon.